Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to get started. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's a super big pleasure for Karma to host the AES. I think we used to do AES events somewhat frequently, but it's been several years since the last one that I can remember. I'm looking at Julius, who might remember more of the history, but great to get this tradition reinvigorated. So I was super happy when BZ from the AES chapter and Pat reached out to me wondering if Pat could give a reprise of his very popular AES talk here for the local audience and bring the Bay Area chapter of the AES here into Karma and get a chance to meet some of our students, of which there's, I think, 3, 4, 5. Raise your hand if you're a Karma student. So yeah, hey Karma students. You're the reason we're here tonight. So that's great. So yeah, if you want to meet a Karma student, talk to one of those people. And I will just take some slight institutional credit for Pat, who got his PhD here at Karma. No?
No, I was just a researcher.
Oh, you were just a researcher here?
Yeah,
oh.
Same with Nick.
Wow, okay, cool. Well, so I'll take slightly less institutional credit for Pat, who was only a researcher here.
Yeah.
And I'll turn it over to BZ on behalf of the AES. Thanks again for, I'm Matt Wright, by the way, the technical director of Karma. So happy to have everyone here.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out on a Monday night. This is for this wonderful event. I'm so happy to see so many people here. I am BZ Lewis. I'm the AES chair. But yeah, yeah. So thank you. So we love to build community, and it makes me so happy to see so many people here. I mean, there's people from all over the Bay Area. There's even people here from all over the United States. So this is very cool. But these events really help to bring everybody together, and building community. Having people make connections is kind of what we're all about at AES. To that end, I should talk about some events we have coming up. We have monthly Atlas listening sessions at Studio 132 in Oakland. Shameless plug, that's my studio. We get together and talk about all things Dolby Atlas, and that room was tuned by our very own Dolby certified room tuner. Where are you, Eric Foreman? Right over there. You guys can't see him, but right over there. Yeah, cool. Let's see, next month, I think on June 6th, we have an event at the California Historical Radio Society, and we're going to be doing, it's like a little fix-it clinic for like fixing old radios and stuff like that, but you get hands-on experience like soldering and stuff like that, so you can take that knowledge and make your own cables or whatnot, which is pretty cool. July and August, we don't have anything scheduled yet, but we're open to suggestions, so, talk to me later. September is our studio crawl, which is going to be in the East Bay this year. I think we gave out like $10,000 worth of prizes at the last one in San Francisco, so that's going to be pretty cool with an after party at 25th Street Studios. And then we just have so many events. We have like the holiday party coming up. We have the big AES convention in Nashville. But all these events, they're all tailor-made to make your participation in AES an absolute no-brainer. Every one of these events, they're either free or at a substantially discounted rate for AES members. So, most people join just for access for the online technical documents, but we do this because you guys are worth it. We love you, and we're better when we're together. So, if you're not an AES member, but you want to be, just go to aes.org, and or you can talk to me later. So enough of my blabbing. Let me talk about our next presenter. I also should mention that some of the people who worked on this are also here. Julia Smith is here. Nick Porcaro is here. Where are you guys? Just raise your hand. Yeah, there you go. Where's Nick? He was here a second ago.
He's raising a glass rather than his hand.
Okay, let's see.
And Jordan Rudis will patch in 45 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Pat Scandalis, pretty awesome guy. CTO, acting CEO of Moforte,
Mobile Loudness.
Moforte Mobile Loudness. He's held lead engineering positions at, get this, National Semiconductor, Teradyne, some company called Apple and Sun, and spent the past 32 years in digital media. Is just 32? Just 32. Okay, yeah. He was an audio DSP researcher at Stanford University Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. I think that's right here. He co-founded VP of Engineering for Staccato Systems, a successful spin out of Stanford CCRMA. Sold to Analog Devices in 2001. Sorry, he's held VP positions at Tune2.com, Jara Systems, and Liquid Digital Media, responsible for online digital music e-commerce properties for Walmart. He holds a BS, Bachelor of Science in Physics from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and currently a visiting scholar at CCRMA Stanford. So everybody give it up for Pat Scandalis.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I being amplified enough? Excellent. Okay, I'm going to sit down. Let's go right into the talk. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about this technology called physical modeling synthesis, and I'm going to talk a lot about the history of the technology. The technology has been bubbling along for quite a long time, and it's reached a very interesting level of maturity at the present time. And there's going to be parts where I'll ask Julius to talk a little bit about some stuff that he's worked on. Nick, in the way back, will ask you to answer some questions at some point, and then Jordan Rudis at a quarter to the hour will patch in, and he'll give us a couple thoughts. He's working on some AI technology with the MIT Media Lab right now. So let's just do some housekeeping. This presentation it's like a candy shop. It's filled with lots of sound examples. It's up on the Mo4Te Mobile Loudness website. It's the first presentation under news, and it's a PDF. If you download it, you can click on all of the video links, and you'll be able to play all of the video examples. I'll leave that up there for just a second. Okay, I'm not going to say a lot about myself. I've been here for a long time. I will say that I'm very interested in music. I played music in college. In college, I was the guitar player for Weird Al. And I put my way through college by playing music, and then I had a dead zone for about 10 years where I was doing technology, not really playing music. And then Nick got me to play in bands again. What you see, this movie down here that you see at the bottom, is my senior thesis from 1982. I used a solution for the partial differential equation called D'Alembert's solution. We're going to come back to that in the talk. I used that to model plucked strings and plucked membranes. I had no idea that you could make sound with that. It wasn't until I met Julius, and I was like, I thought it was for making pictures. I didn't know that you can make sound with it. And so I've really been interested in this stuff for a long time. We're going to let it go a little further because we'll see a vibrating membrane done with D'Alembert's solution. Square membrane, there we go. Okay, that's enough to see. It's a vibrating three-dimensional membrane. Okay. One of the things that I want to drive this talk towards is physical modeling instruments as replacements for orchestral sound libraries. If you know about orchestral sound libraries, composers use them extensively, and expression is simulated with things that are called key switches, which is very tedious and egregious. And essentially, composers are choosing different versions of samples, which really limits expressivity when performing an instrument. And the shift being towards calibrated physical models. We have a lot of physical models these days. There are ways to calibrate them today, but there's some technology coming along that will allow us to really do some great stuff with calibration, so that we can calibrate them to specific instruments, perhaps using AI technology. And this is the demo that I did at NAMM. Basically, my challenge to composers was, look, here's a little section of a saxophone. I'm just going to directly express it with direct manipulation. How do you do that with key switches? And the answer is, it's like 2 to 4 hours of hard stuff. Just listen to it. And this is a physical model. The particular app that you see here playing the physical models is the app that my company makes. It's called GeoShred. It's a new kind of musical instrument, and you'll see a lot of the demos are done with GeoShred. But you can play physical models from regular keyboards, you can play them from Win controllers, you can play them from MPE controllers. It just happens to be when you go to something like the glass on an iPad, and you really get great access to three-dimensional expression and pitch fluidity. And we'll talk about pitch fluidity a little bit later. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through a brief history of physical modeling synthesis. In that history, we're going to do some demos, and the demos are really fun to listen to. I'm going to talk about MPE as an enabling technology for composition and orchestration. And I don't know if folks know about MPE. It's been around for 8 years now. It's been around for a long time. But it is an extension to MIDI 1 in which every note can be expressed three-dimensionally. And it was a door opener for these physical models because now we have a way to express them. I'm going to show some examples of full musical ensembles using physical models. We used to do this back in the day here at Karma, but we had a small refrigerator size set of blades, 56,000 blades, and it was very computationally intensive to do that. Now you can just do it on your MacBook. And then I want to talk at the very end about the near future AI calibration. There's a whole lot of things that are going to happen. MIDI 2 is out. It does have a very important impact on how orchestrators are going to orchestrate. I'm going to talk about the orchestral articulation profile, which is a part of MIDI 2. And then I want to talk a little bit about virtual performers. And Jordan will join us when he is available to talk about his virtual performer project, the JamBot, which is basically a real-time AI bot, which is simulating Jordan. He speaks to it musically, and it speaks back to him. Well, that's very cool. And then we'll have questions. Okay, first, here's a list of physical modeling collaborators. Julius has been working in this area. Is it 50 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, for a long time.
Started in '77 here.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
Volunteer.
It's a very interesting area, and there's been a lot of work done. Nick Porcaro, who's in the very back, was one of the researchers here at Stanford in the mid-90s when we worked on physical modeling. There's a picture of myself. To the left here is Jordan Rudis, who basically became like the fourth Beatle. We call him the sacred user because everything we do, we show it to him and he goes, no, you should do it a different way because this is how musicians will interact with it. He plays that role. And then down here at the bottom, this is Lele and Stefano. They're in Italy. They run a company called Audio Modeling, and they have been studying Julius's papers for the last maybe 15, 20 years, and they have done amazing work bringing almost all the orchestral instruments to as physical models. And to the right here is Sutu, who is in India, and he's done a lot of work on modeling South Asian, Indian instruments as physical models, and we'll get to see some examples of those. And then that's Stevie Wonder. He's just cool. Okay, so we're going to go through a brief history of physical modeling synthesis. So I'm going to I know you're sitting over there, Julius, but I'm going to let your video speak for you.
It's not food time.
I've been working on these models ever since my band days. I've been trying to make new musical instruments based on physical models. Now you can run them in real time. So on a cell phone, you can have a complete physical electric guitar and all of its effects.
So in that demo, we'll see that demo again. That's Gerald Peter. He does this rocking electric guitar on his phone. And he just sounds like an over-the-top wailing guitar player. So when we were doing research here in '94, physical modeling was poised to be the next big thing. And in fact, Keyboard Magazine did 2 back-to-back issues about why physical modeling was going to be the next big thing. It didn't become the next big thing, and we're going to talk about why that happened, and we'll also talk about why it's back. Okay, demos. And I'll do a little voiceover in the demos. acts like he's in a street game. This guy Phil, he's a really good bass player. He's played for a while. This is Jordan playing just a cello and just an oboe with his piano. It's a full arrangement. This is a full 11-part Baroque ensemble, all physical models, no samples, all done with physical models, and it's played on an iPad too. This is a Indian power trio. This player, Mahesh Raghavan, is a pretty big star in India. Wow. That group is just over the top. Okay, so that's what's possible expressively with physical models. It's no longer a clip art, if you will. It's an actual expressive musical opportunity. And musicians using these models can transform their emotional expression into something that is realized musically. So one of the things that I get asked a lot is physical modeling AI. No, it's not AI. In fact, it's a lot older than AI. It's based, some of the technology goes back to the 1700s, some of it solidly goes into the early 20th century. And so they're basically methods in which the sound is generated by creating a mathematical model of the actual sound generation system. And when we create those models, we can create controls on those models so that gestures from a controller can be mapped to things that you might do musically. And so you wind up with, like Mahesh, he's doing gamakas in the South Asian music. He's wiggling his hand on the screen in the gesture of the gamaka. Or he's moving his finger up vertically to swell the sound expressively. So those gestures can be mapped to real types of controls in the model. And physical modeling it's not like a single algorithm. It's a collection of a whole lot of different algorithms, but it's physics plus math and no samples. Okay, I'm going to only touch on this one briefly, but there's a whole taxonomy of musical instruments. The work has been done in various areas in these instruments. There's still work to be done. And in my own company, we're going to be releasing some technology around idiophones, things that you bang on sometime this summer, because it's a very interesting area. Okay, early mechanical voice systems. As early as 1857, Joseph Farber attempted to create a talking machine using bellows and reeds. And he somehow intuitively understood that the human vocal tract was a lot of different tubes. And he made this thing with the head on it. Honestly, he made the creepiest thing I've ever seen. And I believe it is said that it actually could talk. But part of the basis of this, and you'll see this at the bottom, is the human vocal tract can be modeled as a set of tubes in series. And when I first moved here in 1983, I went to the Exploratorium, and they had these wonderful lucite tubes that had been bored in these shapes that you see here. And each one of these tubes just had a buzzer, like from a kid's toy. And when you play the buzzer into the tubes, you hear vowels, and I'll let you hear this. So go to the Exploratorium sometime. That display is still out. So if you take that idea that the human vocal tract can be modeled as a set of tubes, you come to 1937, 1939. This is the age of radio, and people are doing incredible things with radio tube circuits. You've got the theremin, you've got the Hammond Novacord, which is really a synthesizer, and this thing that was done by Homer Dudley at Bell Labs called the Voder. And it was an electronic speech synthesis system, and it used a lot of vacuum tubes to model the vocal tract, basically creating different filters for each of the tubes. And they had controls on them. And they connected those controls to this keyboard that you can see here. And it was demonstrated at the 1939 World's Fair. It was a talking system, and a person could learn how to play it, and I'm going to let you hear it.
The machine uses only two sounds produced electrically. Let's see how you put expression into a sentence. Say, she saw me, with no expression. She saw me. Now say it in answer to these questions. Who saw you? She saw me.
And it's just amazing that somebody was able to learn how to play that. I want to point out the year, too, 1939. This is the year before World War II. And there were a lot of amazing musical things going on, and I mentioned them briefly, but the theremin is around in previous years before this. Hammond has a real synthesizer made with tubes called the Novacord, and all this stuff kind of gets lost because of World War II. So post-World War II, Bell Labs again, same idea, the vocal tract model. A pair of researchers, Kelly and Lochbaum, did a digital model of the vocal tract. And this is really the first physical model. This is amazing that they did this in 1961. They did it on an IBM computer, and we can hear a little example of it here. Max Matthews, who was a teacher here at CCRMA, did an example, a bicycle built for two, and you can hear it, and it was computed on this IBM computer.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer.
So apparently Max was friends with Arthur C. Clarke, and Arthur C. Clarke saw this demo at one point. And so when you get to the movie 2001,
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
when the HAL 9000 is shut down, he goes through some of his early training.
Give me your answer to.
I guess he might have been an LLM too, if you think about it. Okay, so now we get into these physical modeling algorithms, many of which are still relevant today. So this Karplus-Strong algorithm was discovered by Alex Strong and Kevin Karplus, and they discovered it as a self-modifying wavetable. I don't think they knew that it was a physical model, but they. I happened to talk at Kevin at an AM show about 6 years ago, and he told me he told his mom that it sounded like a guitar, and he didn't know why it sounded like a guitar, but it sounded like a guitar. So it was actually licensed to Mattel. And David Jaffe, who was a composer here at CCRMA, used it musically in a composition. I'll let you hear a little excerpt of it. So there's little tinkles that you hear. And then David and Julius worked on an extended version of this algorithm, extended Karplus-Strong. And this is an amazing piece of DSP engineering because it really establishes that it is a model of the solution of the wave equation. It has all the math for how you can manipulate this to do all kinds of interesting things. And David did another composition, which I'll let you hear a piece of it. Julius, how was this computed here at CCRMA?
On the Samsung box.
And a Foonly computer, right?
It was a special, before that was a PDP-6
Yep.
and the KL10. And then the Samsung box was to take the load off the KL10, which was time shared by everyone in the whole Stanford AI lab. So they did not like us. They made us work, at 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. because, they wanted the cycles for themselves. But we had our own machine made. It looked like a big green refrigerator in the machine room called the Samson Bot. Peter Sampson, MIT, and then Samson's Concepts, and then he designed it with Andy Moore, and they built it. It was about $100,000 worth of hardware, and it could do all this stuff in real time. It could do what you're hearing now in real time.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. So you get to 1988, and the next machine launches. The launch of the next machine, there is a composition with a physical model. And Julius, your group did all the work for that, right? There was the music kit.
The Sound and Music group at Next was in charge of the finale at the introduction of the Next computer in Debut Symphony Hall, the big George Coates sound system, and it was done at big time. And Dan Kobiaka, first year violinist of the San Francisco Symphony, was playing the violin part, and the rest of the chamber orchestra, you might say, had to be the cube on a stool. And you're going to play a clip?
I have a clip.
Bach A minor concerto, third movement.
It's 1988. So, if you download
He
this,
had a standing ovation.
Did he?
Not for the music, for the whole show. It was another Steve Jobs, extravaganza.
Right.
Sun Microsystems stock fell like 50%.
wow, yeah, that must have been amazing to be there. So, there were 2 seminal papers published about early physical modeling research, and if you get this deck, the little document thing there, you can click on it and you can actually look at the documents. You can read them there. They're very good papers. I've read both of these papers many, many times. Okay, so now we get to digital waveguide models. This is the follow-on to extended Karplus-Strong. Again, this is Julius. And at this point, I think you've established that it actually is dollar resolution for the wave equation, right?
That's a circuitous path. It actually grew out of musical acoustics. So you could say it was a joining point between computer technology and musical acoustics that led to this. But the real motivation was Belovitch. So if you get his book, the history of circuit theory, classical network theory. I'm sorry. That's what I was reading, and I was trying to solve the problem of reverb. How do you make a reverb that goes forever, and you can reorganize the paths any way you want? How do you make this sort of toolkit where you can connect anything to anything, and it's always the same reverb time? And so Gary Kendall at Northwestern was building these giant reverberators, and every time he did something like that, it would blow up, right? It would just go unstable at some high probability. And so we just happened to be on the same shuttle bus on the way to the ICMC, and he told me his problem, and I said, well, the way we manage this is with all-pass filters. There must be some way to make it a big all-pass filter. And so Belovitch, if you look at Belovitch, he has a huge, multi-channel all-pass filter type stuff. So that's really where it came from. But then it connected, sort of after the fact, you could connect it to Karplus-Strong, you could connect it to Kelly Lochbaum, you could connect it to D'Alembert, but that is not where it came from.
Interesting.
It came from Belovitch.
I didn't know this part of the story. So this was licensed to Yamaha, right?
Yeah, so that was another just completely random thing. So I gave this talk in The Hague at the ICMC. It came out and had some nice tunes, and Wachi-san from Yamaha, the director of engineering, was in the audience at an ICMC. I mean, what are the odds that the director of engineering at Yamaha will be at an ICMC in the audience? So I didn't know he was there. I knew Bob Moog was there because he came up to me afterwards, and he was just interviewing me for this newsletter he was in. And I looked at his name tag and said, "Wait, you're Bob Moog." I said, "Whoa, let me interview you. I'll trade you." So so that was where they took note of it, and I didn't know that they were there. They hired a consultant to develop it and check it out, and a year later they knocked on the door of Stanford and said, "Hey, we think we're interested in this." And so it's just a completely freak thing. You couldn't plan it. It's just one of those unique things in the universe. Probability zero trajectory number. It's the way the world works. It's just random stuff.
So the product they built from this technology, the VO1, is it's still an amazing product. People sell them used on eBay. And I'm just going to let you hear what the VL1 could do. In 1994, and it had a killer saxophone, it had a killer shakuhachi. The Swam guys brought that. Go ahead, Julius.
I just have to have one more sentence. The reason they were there, the reason they were looking for new technology was because the FM patent was nearing the end of its life.
Right.
And they were looking for the next big thing. What's going to be the next big thing? They were looking for something they could make the next big thing.
Well, they did
10-year
something with
time
it.
frame. And they think in terms of time-year,
Yeah.
10-year horizons.
So the shakuhachi and the saxophone on the VL1 is still to die for. The audio modeling guys have come up with the saxophone that's as good. Shakuhachi, we still don't have that in physical models. Maybe this summer my company will release the shakuhachi, but I'll let you hear this. That's the shakuhachi. Here's the saxophone. So you get to the 90s, and Nick and I are both here working at Stanford, researching physical modeling, working with Julius, and Nick wound up driving the creation of this editor called SynthBuilder, which was an editor that you could connect together objects that were DSP objects, you could connect together control objects, and you could build models. And we wound up building about 70% of the general MIDI sound set. And we're still aiming at this goal, the next big thing, because Keyboard Player Magazine said it's the next big thing. Everybody thought it was the next big thing. We think that sound cards on computers are going to have physical modeling on them. And Nick, do you want to say anything about SynthBuilder at all?
It started out because I was hanging out in Julius's class, and I didn't want to work any stupid corporate work anymore. So I was messing around with the next computer, and I noticed there was this drawing program, and I noticed there was a music kit, so I did a mashup of it, but the old way, just reading all the manuals about how to learn how to do next programming, and just eventually sort of threw it together, and just one thing led to another, and it just became this big project.
And Nick, when you say the old way, you mean no vibe coding, right? Yeah, because that's how we're doing everything these days.
No internet connection to
Yeah.
speak of, except like Gopher. All the knowledge was in the building, So yeah, back in those days, you just had to talk to people a lot more, and just sort of figure stuff out, just from first principles a lot of the time.
And
So
the documentation was like 8 shelf feet, right?
Oh yeah, it was like a PDP-11 set of manuals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had to read the manual.
and it was quite an experience. And talking about the value of hanging out, I was in Julius's class, and one day he said towards the end of the class, it actually happened to be I remember the date. It was April 20th, 1991. Interestingly, 420 day before all the thing. And he said, wouldn't it be cool if we could just have little signal processing blocks that we could connect together in a drawing program? And I was like, boom, that's what I got to do. So it's one of John Cage's rules, just show up for everything. So you guys are doing that today. Congratulations.
And we still have SynthBuilder on 2 different machines in my office at home. There are still models on there that we have not yet harvested or have not re-engineered. I'm going to show you a couple idiophone models only because idiophones are something that are very interesting, and they are not generally in commercial products yet, but soon they will be. I'll skip over the first one. This is actually the winch I'm hanging outside of our house. When all the notes add together, everything is coupled together, and you hear that shimmer that you hear in a piano soundboard. Can't do that with samples. So hopefully the world will have idiophones again after this summer. Tubular bells. That was calibrated from a sample set, but it is a model. It is an actual model. Here's a full percussion ensemble. Again, no samples. All physical models. And a taiko ensemble. There was a guitar model that came out of this work as well. I worked on that. There was an earlier person, Charles Sullivan, in 1990, who did a very similar thing, and I read his paper. And once we had Synth Builder, I figured that, oh, we can put a feedback loop and can put some distortion in it. And this guitar is able to sound like a number of different guitars. I'll let you hear the examples. The one thing that you can see in this picture is you can see the engine that we used for computation back then. It was 8 56,000 developer boards with the crystals popped off and replaced with twice 80 megahertz crystals. And we could do full ensembles back then, but that wasn't commercially viable. It was too early. Or is this? Feedback distortion. It's feeding back. One of Julius's students, Tim Stilson, was researching how to do virtual analog. And back then, in those days, digital synthesizers didn't have filters. They didn't sound like analog synthesizers. And Tim is one of the first people to figure this out. This is a preset that I recorded much later, and I recorded this around 2000 in my office.
We have here is Synth Builder and Synth Core from around 2000 running on my legacy Windows 98 machine. I've got a patch up and running on it. It's one of Tim Stilson's Moog VCF patches. I did this as an example. It's got some detuned oscillators in it. I'm going to play it just so you can hear it.
You get the idea. Analog. We take that for granted today. And then full ensembles were done historically with this engine. You can actually see a better shot of the engine with the stacks, with the blades stacked in it. And I'm going to let you hear a full ensemble. Each instrument was running on a different blade. A lot of what you're hearing in there is this modal percussion idiophones, which there's really a need for that. Okay, so first generation physical modeling products were kind of at the end of the early history. The VL1 was really the standout product at that time. Korg had some physical modeling technology which still exists in their latest products. There was a 3D or a physical modeling chip called the Ariel ASP301. I actually programmed the guitar on it, and it never really went very far. And then there was a company called Staccato Systems, which was spun out of this research to do physical modeling. And in the end, what happened with that company is we had a DLS, a sample synthesizer, and that got combined. I made it run at ring 0, so it looked like a piece of hardware that got combined with a $2 chip, and it killed the sound card market, and no physical modeling. It didn't see the light of day. We, our current company, actually got these patents back from analog devices about 8 years ago, and they're all expired now. So, but it was a gift. They gave them back to us to do something with. So I said in the beginning that 1994 physical modeling was poised to be the next big thing. So what really happened? It was computationally expensive. Developing the models was really, really hard. Voicing was hard. And there were no controllers that could do multi-dimensional expression. That guitar controller that you saw there was probably about the only one. So there was one thing.
Cheap.
Yeah.
The price of memory plummeted.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
The cost of memory plummeted in 1996. Sampling became common, and every sound card that all of us had on our computers around then had a wavetable chip. That was a $27 wavetable chip. That's another story how you can replace that wavetable chip with a piece of software that we wrote for $2. But essentially sampling won, and it's been the order of the day. And essentially we've been living with clip art for musical instruments since 1996, and it doesn't seem reasonable, right? Especially since you can do physical models. So this is why physical modeling is back. We got lots of compute power. You don't have to have a DSP farm anymore to do ensembles. There's lots of models now. Audio modeling makes models, Piano Tech makes models, we make models, and MPE, which has been around for the last 8 years, is an enabling technology. All of a sudden your controller can do three-dimensional expression. And I'm going to just say it out front because I don't defend it anymore. The glass on the iPad is quite honestly an amazing multi-dimensional controller. And it's been really adopted by performers in India because you can perform gamakas on it. You can't do that as easily on some of the other MPE controllers. And the fourth thing is that we have calibration technologies now where we can make that guitar sound like one of the guitars in my set of guitars that I have at home, but it needs to go further, and that's where we're getting to at the very end of the talk when we talk about AI, is using AI for calibration for physical models. Okay, I'm not going to say much about MPE. You can look at the deck, but it basically gives you three-dimensional control for virtually every note that you're performing, and it's a really cool technology. I'm the chairman of the committee. Here are some MPE controllers. They're all fun toys. Every one of these things is fun to sit down and play. I do want to talk about MPE and the importance of pitch fluidity, because Western music pitch fluidity is largely ignored except for guitar players or pedal steel players. So this is Mahesh Raghavan. He's going to play two notes. That's the first note. That's the second note. So because of the pitch fluidity that you can have on the glass, you can also have it on the little instrument, you also can have it on a Rolly C board. Because of the pitch fluidity, musicians in India, especially Bollywood musicians, have adopted this technology. For my own company, about 60% of our customers are in India because they can play things with pitch fluidity. We didn't seek them out, they found us. And it's a really great collaboration. Okay. I'm going to just do a little bit. We're going to patch Jordan in here in just a moment, in 2 minutes, but I'm going to play some modern full music ensembles using physical models.
GeoShred Studio is an AUV3 and BST3 plugin that runs on Mac.
I'm going to skip forward a little bit. This is Jordan. He did a sort of Baroque composition in just a few minutes. He just sat down in his living room and he recorded it into Logic. Okay, so this is where we are now. We don't have to use clip art for composing. And composers are starting to figure it out, but there's still the workflow, the old workflow, and it's going to be some time before they switch over. The main reason that they use orchestral sample libraries is because there's a wide variety of timbres. We need to solve that using AI and calibration. Okay. I'm going to skip over all of this stuff talking about various products. You can read that if you download the deck, because I want to get to a point where we can sync up with Jordan. I do want you to hear Jordan's thoughts about why physical models for compositions are really great.
Well, now that we've reached this point where the physical models are out there, people have heard them, they can enjoy them. A lot of people have GeoShred on their iPad or iPhone or any of the iOS devices. There's this great awareness that we can do this organic, realistic instruments. So the beauty of that is you're sitting in your studio and you can create a quartet, you can create a string quartet, you can do something with the brass, with the woodwinds, with ethnic instruments.
I want you to hear a prog composition that he did. Again, he just did this on the fly. No samples. Just the flute. The violin, the cello,
GeoShred Studio Sessions.
Jordan did this. He showed me his studio. He had all these cables running around his studio, and it used to be that he had to connect up all these synthesizers. And for the last 5 years, he's only used virtual instruments based on samples. In the last 3 or 4 years, he's pretty much using virtual instruments based on physical modeling. So it's a natural progression from the way things used to work. Okay, and okay, we're almost ready. If Jordan shows up, we can patch him in, but I want to talk about the future, a couple topics. I want to talk about more models and AI calibrated models and some of the great work that's being done, research around that. I'm going to mention MIDI too, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot. Oh, great, there we go. Hey, Jordan, great. We're almost at the point where we want to have you talk about something. So I'm going to skip forward in the presentation, and I'm going to skip forward to the Jambot, so you can tell us a little bit about how you're using AI for, there we go, for virtual performance. And so Jordan, do you just want to talk yourself about the Jambot? Oh, we can't hear him.
Jordan, you're muted in Zoom.
There we go. How about now?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, let me see if I have an echo.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
hold on, I can fix that.
KBN?
Yeah.
So I'll give some context for this. One of the things that we see happening in the future is that AI is going to play a whole bunch of different roles with not only physical models, but with music creation. I happen to be on a committee, an AI working group, and one of the things that we're struggling with is how do musicians use AI in music, and how do we ensure that humans are still in the equation. And Jordan has a very interesting spin here, where he's been working on this project with the Media Lab called the Jambot.
And I'm actually here with my MIT guys who created Jambot, which is very convenient timing.
There we go.
Lancelot and Perry are here, and they're the main guys who brought this idea to life. So I might ask them to chime in as well as we go. So, and can you guys hear me okay? Is everything good with the audio?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Awesome. So a couple of years ago, I kind of had this wild idea, like what would it be like if we created some kind of a model that would have my kind of musical brain? Because I was curious what it would be like to jam with someone or something that had my sensibilities. And it was just kind of like a wild thought. I didn't really know if it could happen or not. But then I met these gentlemen back here, and they pretty much brought it to life. It was an interesting process because at first, I guess it didn't work. And then one day I walked in and we tried our model, and it was literally playing along with me as I moved from chord to chord. And I think I did a little happy dance in the room. We were all really excited. And that started this incredible journey. And it's been amazing because what we're working on is, and what we're seeing results with is so different than what I think, well, everybody that I know is working on, because it's an interactive system. It's always listening to what I'm doing at the keyboard, and I'm always listening as well to what it's coming up with. So, and it's all, I might have said, it's all in the MIDI domain. We're not in the audio domain. It's working on MIDI information. So actually we're preparing here at my studio because there's a couple of big events coming up. One of them is the AI conference at Berkeley. We're going to show some next level things that we're doing with the models that we're creating. And then after that, I'm going out to Leipzig, Germany to be part of the Bach Festival, partly because one of the models we created is kind of like a Jordan meets Bach type of thing with a lot of counterpoint. And it's really pretty interesting. Do you guys have anything to add to what I'm saying about Jambot? It might be cool to say.
No, I mean, I think you
say
said well. I think it's, I don't know what was talked about before, but I think kind of what you said, like trying to move past the kind of text prompt and moving into like music, the domain of just like musical prompts, and having, you being able to play around and have the models come back with something that's inspired by what you play, but a bit different and inspired by your data set as well, is kind of what feels like interests us and what interests you.
Yeah. I think we really think about how Jordan can be comfortable with this as an instrument and that he can play with on stage. And so with all of our work, we've been thinking about how we communicate this to an audience, and how it's good for Jordan, but it's also something that can affect a lot more people than just Jordan, and create some really cool music for people to enjoy.
Yeah. And one of the really important things about what we're doing, which I'm kind of realizing more and more, especially as I come closer and closer to, these performances, is that what this AI is doing for me, what our model is doing for me, I feel like it's kind of like almost like raising me up, and like, because I have to like focus so deeply on it, and then what it's giving me almost like feeds me. So I feel like it's almost like the opposite of what some people are saying about like the AI. I feel like the AI is like supporting me and allowing me to grow as a musician and doing things that are like unexpected and challenging and interesting and making me really think. And what's crazy about it all is these models are so heavily weighted with my own musical data. So it creates this interesting dynamic, and it's really, really exciting.
And Lancelot, you said something that I thought was very interesting. We're all interested or are hearing about text queries. These are musical queries. Jordan is speaking a musical phrase and it's speaking back to him, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think you can talk about it more, but it was interesting to, we started this and I didn't know how Jordan was interacting with other musicians, like when he was improvising and meeting them. But then what I discovered is Jordan tends to sometimes like meet someone and, play with them on a piano, and they don't even like talk much before. They just kind of like play around and they, get to know each other through the music. And sometimes somehow that kind of feels like what's happening with the model. So I feel like that's kind of an interesting dynamic here of you're not going through the interface of language or something like kind of another abstraction. You're just, it's producing music, it's producing like MIDI notes, and it's listening to your MIDI notes. So that, it's the only interface here, and feels like it's kind of natural to Jordan in some way.
Yeah, one of the amazing things, we were just playing around with it today. I was continuing to train this kind of like, let's call it the Bach Jordan model, and I was doing this thing where I was playing eighth notes and then 16th notes, and within the training I would occasionally switch to this triplet groove. So all the data was there, and then after we trained it and I'm playing back, what was really cool is I'm playing along kind of like da 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 da. All of a sudden I go da 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 da, and then I let the model go and it picks up. It's kind of like, oh, you want to do triplets? Okay, we'll do triplets. And it starts playing in triplets. And so the way I use that model is I do a lot of back and forth, but I've also been doing a lot of kind of interaction where I'll influence it, I'll prompt it, and then it starts playing according to what it heard. And then I'll play along with it as well. And it makes us laugh because it's really, really cool.
Okay. Great, Jordan, Lancelot, I forgot.
Barry.
Thank you so much for talking to us right now. And if you get the deck, I'm going to switch back here to this. Is that it? Yeah, if you get the deck, there's a very nice video of Jordan and a violinist, Camilla, playing with the Jambot. And again, this is not what you hear about, where, 14-year-old writes the music for film by writing queries. These are musical queries. They're talking back and forth through each other. Thank you so much, Jordan.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Pat. All right.
Okay, we're coming up on time here, but I'm going to bring up one more AI topic. There's a lot of AI topics that are possible, But this was what I proposed at the very beginning of the talk, which is that physical models, vanilla physical models, could be calibrated to be specific instruments. And we've actually been doing calibration for a long time, but it's very hard to do. And so a lot of the guitar models that we have are calibrated. We take real recordings of every note on every fret on every string, and we get these spectral diagrams here, and we have some hairy MATLAB code that tries to design the filters in the physical model to cause the model to generate the same set of decays as the original note. And again, this is very time-consuming, but moving forward, a trained AI may be able to do this. Oh, you don't need to hear that again, you heard it already. Okay, so this is a little bit of research that I know, Julius, you're working on with a working group on using neural nets to estimate what each of the knobs should be in a synthesis algorithm. And I actually just borrowed 2 slides from you, this slide and the slide of the architecture that the working group is currently working on. But did you want to say anything about this calibration problem? Because it's fascinating to me that we may eventually be able to basically displace sample libraries with calibrated physical models.
Well, go back one to the block diagram. So that's the current meter. So mostly we've been catching up with the literature, and it's really quite active. I think I'm reviewing like 8 papers in this area for ISMIR, the Music Information Retrieval Conference coming up. So it seems like an exponentially growing topic, and people like the problem. So what you see there looks like vision transformer, except that there's a CNN after the spectrogram, which is a cool idea to kind of make the vision transformer smaller. And then it's got a cross attention, so if you know about the transformer, you know those layers, and so you have the parameters going in, cross attention to the spectrogram, and then out come your parameters, and you train it. I'm actually doing quite well with just the CNN, just the first 2 blocks. So the spectrogram and the 2D CNN, and then I'll have a separate head. I've also got vision transformer and quite a few other architectures. So if you want to pick up this code, it's free open source. Go to my webpage and look for the neural spectral modeling template, and that's just kind of the infrastructure. And send me an email if you have ideas for improvement. It's got all the major architectures, but it doesn't have this one quite yet. This is just kind of an assembly task. But they also use reinforcement learning, which I'm not doing. So I just take the CNN and have some custom head for each parameter, and it changes. So you want to customize that as a function of your synthesis problem. And I could go on and on, but if you go to my homepage, you'll see my talks in my output. It's all there, and you can ask me about it anytime.
And this not only applies to physical models, it's any synthesis method. It's like FM or subtractive.
It's really just a nonlinear map, right? It's just going from a spectrogram to a vector of parameters, and you can train it to be anything. It could be the name of the spectrogram. It's just what neurons do, right? It's deep learning, and it's the power of neural deep learning in a GPU. And by the way, it does inference in like 5 milliseconds for just a reasonable number of parameters. Like for a guitar player, maybe you have 5 parameters that you really work, and so you set everything up as conditioning, and you have these 5 parameters you want to map. That's like a 5 millisecond inference, and so it's just real time. And in a DAW, even for a big one, the biggest thing I did was like I think it's 9 parameters. It's like a plate, a percussion plate. This was Han's thesis problem, and that was like a 20 millisecond inference. So these are pretty small systems, and that was just on my Mac CPU, no GPUs whatsoever. So I like these small systems, just the power of a neural network to go from something you care about, an audio representation, to something you want, which are parameters for synthesizing that audio in this particular case.
So this is going to be amazing. We're going to get a whole lot of different ways to generate sound with expression.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So once you have those parameters, now it's in your DAW. It's all preset. It's like a preset that you've calibrated to a sound example, and now you can tweak it. You can take it in any direction you want. So it's identify the model. Now you can make the model a little bit bigger. You can make the strings a little stiffer. You can make them dirty. You can make them clean. You have all the parametric control. So you have this huge language, this huge communication and vocabulary because it's a model. It's a huge vocabulary of communication.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. Okay, I'm going to skip over the other AI topics so that we can get to questions. And so there is a section here on MIDI 2, you can read it yourself. I will say one thing, there is a thing in MIDI 2 called the Orchestral Articulation Profile, in which scores in MIDI 2 can store all the different articulations. The team that worked on that has identified about 200 different articulations, so pizzicato, legato, harmonic on a guitar, hammer tap, hammer pull-off, and those can now in MIDI 2 be put in the score. And this has two implications. One is that scores are going to be written with articulations in them, and those articulations can be targeted for physical models, but also means we can use scores for training virtual performers. And I'll leave that as an open topic. By the way, the orchestral articulation profile, go through that. The profile is available in here. You can read it if you want to read it. Again, the document link takes you to the profile, and I'm going to just take us forward to, I will tell you about another thing too. The AI working group, just search on AIWG Wiki. Within the game developer community, they're very concerned about AI for audio applications. The group is developing a wiki of use cases so that people can come along and see what tools are being used. It focuses mostly on voiceover, sound effects, vibe coding, and generative music. And the generative music component is very controversial. And that we're going to be talking about that at the Berklee School of Music when Jordan is there in about 2 weeks. And we're going to go straight. Well, I want to first off express some gratitude. These are all the people who worked with us over the years on various parts of this technology, and Karma has been a central orbital point. The students at Karma, Julius, Chris Chafe, Nick, Matt, and then a lot of different other individuals who were here at Karma at various times. I just want to express gratitude for them, and it's a nice picture of Karma. And with that, we can go to questions, and I know there may be AI questions, and we have enough time that we can linger on those. Do we have a mic that we can hand people for the questions? And that's the mic that's right here, right?
That's the one.
Does anybody have a question? Okay, we got a question back there.
Hello. First off, thank you. It's amazing. One of the things that really interested me coming here is I've been following the development of AI and other things and tools for as a musician, etc. Watching world models develop specifically, and the amount of data and of course all the modulators of pressure and anything, right? I'm wondering what the crossover is in the development of world models for other purposes and the different parameters that are now available, how that is being pulled over to musical, physical modeling instruments and things.
So the question is, what is the intersection between world models and instrument physical models? And by world models, I think you mean game world models, like footsteps and things like that, is that right?
No, more like Google's foray into world models of different environments, being able to, not just physical environmental worlds where you've got, atmospheric pressure and how light hits different 3D objects from different angles and those kind of things, so that you're able to create kind of like a physical instrument of either the environment or inside the body and kind of model how things are going to react, right? So as a musician and thinking about instruments, early physical modeling instruments were amazing, but had limited parameters and compute to work with, right? But also the instruments themselves are often heard from close angles and then relying on DSP reverb, algorithmic reverb or something, whereas a lot of recordings we're used to hearing are microphone in an acoustic space at a certain distance, and what we're used to hearing, as listeners, versus having my ear up right to a violin and going, that sounds just like a violin, you know what I mean? So world models seem to be giving you all these other parameters to go, here's a different perspective, and this angle of lighting, and this is if the room is this kind of thing. So from acoustics to the instrument and all that kind of thing, I'm really curious about those two worlds affecting physical modeling in a huge way.
So I'll make a couple comments about it. I'm going to ask a couple people to answer some questions as well. So everything that we're doing with this is based around real time, trying to have fast instruments. They're mostly based on Dallenberg solution. However, the company Audio Modeling that makes SWAM has a product called Ambiente, which is about spatially placing, using ray tracing, the instruments in the positions of the orchestra. And so that is their approach to world models. But I've seen physical modeling systems that are based on masses and springs. And we saw a very nice example of that at NAMM. And I know one of the students back there is actually working on unifying this, right? You're trying to unify physical modeling and world modeling?
Not world modeling in the sense of the Google world models. I'm trying to sort of draw between circuit models and physical models because it's really just traveling waves.
Yeah.
I think world models, I actually talking about this, the models that can look at something happening in the world and predict what's going to happen next. Like they see a ball in the air and they can predict a vector that corresponds to the ball dropping. Is that what you mean by world models? I know that these sort of...
One example, yeah, and similarly, reactive, being able to test things, and same in medicine and whatnot, being able to see what this is going to do in the human body.
Yeah.
So you're taking data sets from different research that has different languages. And the example was like text at the top of a page you're reading, and then musical notes, and then JavaScript, and, and trying to get those to talk to each other. If you don't know all three languages, trying to read that page is complex, and it seems like world models are taking all the parameters in real life, kind of like the cavity of the instrument and the string resonation, and the space and the microphone.
And some people have tried to use finite element analysis to analyze like a physical object like a glass, dropping it and having it break and the sound that the glass would make. And that's very computationally expensive. And I think, I'm going to ask you, Julius, there were a couple of students here that did that as projects, right?
Yeah.
I saw papers on that.
Yeah, I would just say, I think you can probably get the best physically modeled instruments that way, and they'll cost several orders of magnitude more than what you can really afford in a real-time scenario. So we're sort of going up to that level from a physical model that's old school, but a lot of AI-based calibration and AI infusion of texture. So you think of like texture mapping on spheres. Think about the history of graphics rendering, and all that world. So you can sort of meet in the middle somewhere, and so I'm sure that's the best, but it's also it's even today prohibitively expensive. So we want to get there from below, and even when it wins and it's affordable, we'll still make 3 orders of magnitude of complexity go away and still be competitive, because once it sounds the same and you know what's going on, and to compete with what we're doing, you're going to have to actually map out all the structure. You actually have to do and what do they call it, the mechanistic interpretability studies to map out what the neurons are doing. Where is that structure? Where is that physical representation? They discover clock rings and the weights and stuff like that. So it's almost alchemy, figuring out what's really going on and trying to. But you can go that way, and then you can reduce it back to the old school stuff, because you find how the neurons learned it, and then you can basically tee that up and let it refine it. So you basically go both ways to the middle. And so I'm biased down toward the old school, and they're just going for it. Google, infinite data, infinite compute. You just solve everything end to end with enough data, and didn't try to figure out what happened.
And eventually we'll have enough compute power to do that. I mean, just think of where we went from 30 years ago to now. It's just going to get better so that we can start to do more elaborate things.
And maybe there's a good chance that GEMA 5 or GEMA 6 will just tell us everything.
Yeah, it'll design that.
It'll work it all out.
Yeah. I'll grab the microphone and pass it over here for this question over here.
I was actually just going to mention that there was a multimodal model that I saw that came out recently. There's a multimodal model that I saw that came out recently called Mammal in Nature. That kind of touches on a similar thing where they go over, or they sort of combine 2 billion samples covering protein sequences, small molecules, and gene expression profiles all together.
There is so much going on, I can't get my head around everything that's happening.
That's what I was talking about too.
Yeah, I have to ask ChatGPT or Claude how to explain things to me. Here, I'll get the microphone. Do we have another question somewhere? We got someone in the back. I'll go all the way in the back.
I can also project if that's...
Okay, project.
As we watch these demos, and this isn't just for physical modeling, but also any synthesizer, I get the sense that we can, anytime you're using a different way of controlling an instrument, you're able to do things more easily, or stuff that may not even be possible on the original instrument, or not, at least not easily. To use the sort of classic coding thing, is that a bug or a feature? You know, is that something that we are trying to limit the ability of doing, like octave jumping, or different fingerings that would be really difficult on a clarinet or a saxophone, or subatomic stuff in the embouchure that you can't really do easily on an instrument, but you can do when you're physically modeling it? Is that something that we are trying to prevent, or is that actually a feature of being able to do synthesis and physical modeling?
So I'm going to answer that in two ways. A lot of the models today are set up so that they are just like the real instruments. They have the same range. There's a jump where the valves are going to have a jump. That's important for the listener to have a sonic image of the actual instrument. And if you break that, you start to have an uncanny valley. And so a lot of the models are set up that way. But the other side of this question, we're asked this all the time, can you make something that's absolutely unreal? Like, can I make a cable that's 100 feet long, that's very stiff, and when I bang on it, it does all kinds of big, low frequency waves that go up and down the cable? That's also an interesting problem, and that is also possible.
Can I have one thing?
Yeah.
One of my favorite new instruments is a string that has no decay at all. It has no damping whatsoever. So as a guitar player, you always want more sustain, and you're soaking your strings in kerosene, to try to get them clean and sustained. But this one sustains forever. And so what you hear is the interpolation. So now you want to go from fourth order Lagrange interpolation to sixth order to eighth order, and you just keep cranking up the interpolation because each one sounds different. Each one's a little bit more sustained on the high end, and you just push it right out to half the sampling rate, and then you want a higher sampling rate. So you just kind of get addicted to this quest for perfect, pure sustain. But of course, my ears, poop out at only 16 kilohertz. So I actually can reach it, so I can get. But it's an example where you kind of grow into the parameters and you go beyond the limits of realism, and you want it. And another fun thing is to just turn off interpolation entirely, and you get this really gritty sound. It's like having a lot of frets when you change pitch. And it's a really gritty, scratchy sound that's very useful, and it's infinite sustain with no interpolation attenuation up high. So I love those instruments, and they're completely outside of the real world. They only exist in the virtual world. I can give you many more examples of that. Throughout the history here at Karma, in computer music, one simple one is the Karplus-Strong. It was just a noise burst striking a delay loop, and nobody thought of it. They didn't think of it as a physical model. It took years to figure out the physical interpretation. But composers, once the physical model was figured out, they said, hey, what you really want it to be real. Instead of random numbers, you want a little leaning triangle. You want to put a little triangle that corresponds to where you're plugging this thing. And it's just very, very thin relative sound. And nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted so then we had to come up with the physical interpretation of the noise burst, and it's a random initial position and a random initial velocity. So it's simultaneously randomly plucked and struck at every sample along the string, and that's what they want. They don't want to go back to the single little bing, it's just not interesting. So the Karplus-Strong is an example of a vaulting forward in the virtual world, not possible with a physical string. Prohibitively difficult with a physical harpsichord or piano to hit every point. And so they never went back. So it's just one more example. I could give you many more.
I want to add one to that too. Is one of the students, this is 30 years ago, did a derivative of Karplus-Strong called Weird String. And that, it's like, it's got 6 controls on it, and you move the controls around, and it's doing all kinds of crazy things. It is a physical model, but it's doing crazy things, and it's an instrument unto its own as well. So both are viable things. create a sonic image of an actual instrument, do crazy things that are really fun for performers to express.
On the other side of the coin, the Yamaha VL1, they were committed to always giving you a decent note on pitch. That's a huge constraint with this kind of stuff. And so they very carefully limited the parameter range. They even had a patent on limiting parameter ranges in a non-cuboidal volume in parameter space. So they have these, very exotic parameter constraints that kept you in a playable range no matter what you did. And so they just were not going to let you, get out there. It can't sound bad. It just can never sound bad. We were on one side, they were on the complete other side. So it's a healthy ecosystem that way.
And in the future, there should be a bunch of weird instruments.
Yeah.
So people have got to start creating weird instruments.
That's what free open source is for, right?
Yeah.
You can really hack it.
Okay. So he's going to be next, right?
Is this on? Don't forget Asia Dreaming, like writing LFOs on the model parameters.
Oh yeah, actually, I'll play that at the very end. I'll play Asia Dreaming so that you can hear it. It's a sonic sculpture done with physical modeling.
So I think this relates to what was just asked. So my interest in this is primarily about synthesis, and I'm also a GeoShred owner.
Okay.
And I noticed that it gives you a lot of preset models that imitate real instruments, and it seems to be very focused on competing with sampling. And what I'm wondering, there's got to be an underlying architecture. Can you expose the controls to the user? Is there any plan to do that? And
well, in the guitar model, they are exposed.
In the guitar model?
Yeah, the guitar model has like 70 parameters, and you can do crazy things with the guitar model. You can play with the stiffness of the strings. I'll play Asia Dreaming, which Nick brought up. So you can get in there and you can do all kinds of crazy things.
But I mean, are these things specifically coded up for like your violin, your guitar, your...
Every algorithm is a different algorithm.
Every algorithm is...
Yeah, that's why I did that taxonomy at the beginning.
Do you think that it would be possible to maybe make something that could do all that, where it wouldn't necessarily be all different algorithms, or it would be maybe a unified a single audio path, but a varied control path?
I'm going to vote against that. I'll tell you why. Because it's like saying, can you make a violin be the same as a clarinet? There are underlying processes that are similar. They both have periodic processes, but the geometry of the instrument, which is what we model, the behavior of the instrument, and the behavior of the clarinet, which we model, they're different.
Okay.
And so that's where they're different models. But there's another thing, is a lot of the instrument models come from audio modeling. We just get those black boxes. We don't have any access to the interior of those models. The guitar model is ours, which it's fully exposed. The South Asian instruments, they're semi-exposed. They're sort of in midway between what audio modeling has and what we have with the guitar model.
Okay. Well, maybe there's you could sort of get not quite as detailed in the modeling and yet expose a lot more parameters. So you could get 90% of the way to several real instruments and get 100% of the way to 1,000 imaginary instruments that don't exist that could be used for sound design.
So when we release our modal algorithm this summer, and you heard some of those modal examples, I think you're going to be able to get in there and noodle with many, many different parameters simultaneously.
Well, thanks.
Okay, great. Who is next? You were next, right? Okay, there we go. Thanks for being the GeoShred leader.
Thanks for making it. It's fun.
Thanks.
So, Julius, I'll aim this one at you. Thank you. First off, if I'm understanding what you're currently doing with your CNN network and what have you, it's actually taking a DSP, as you would say, an old school DSP model, and taking the parameters and modeling what those parameters should be set to hit instrument X and instrument Y. Okay, what typically are the number of parameters? I know it's going to depend on the instrument, but what's a typical load in that area?
Well, it's most strongly a function of how many parameters And so, as a guitar player, I don't vary a lot of parameters. So I'm interested in just a handful of parameters. And for that, a million parameters is enough. So a 1 million CNN. I let the LLM sort of experiment, do the hyper searches and so on. I use the Hydra. So if you get my neural spectral modeling template, there are some simple examples of this. So there are actual code examples for these 1 million parameter cases. And the most I've ever used really for my practical work is 4 million. And that's the upper end for what I've been needing. And so that takes me up to like 12 parameters. So it just depends. Now, but the literature is kind of different. The literature likes to go after a Yamaha FM synthesizer with 140 parameters, and they really want to take any sound and approximate it with an arbitrary FM patch. And that's a really hard problem, but that's the kind of thing they really enjoy going after. I'm just not interested in that scale, and I wouldn't try to do that with FM. I mean, we know how to model FM. We think of FM as a spectral modeling technique, where a pair of operators will give you a nice formant, and so we know how to build up, we know how to craft a spectrum with FM. But to come at it this way, well, more power to them, and the neural nets still work it out, right? That's the state-of-the-art example of what they were going after that as well. But in my case, I'm more modest, just going for a practical musician's solution. It runs in real time, no GPUs needed, and 1 million parameters would probably work for most of your use cases, and 4 million is pretty luxurious. That's where you get to like 20 milliseconds inference.
Okay, so you are keeping it, because 4 million, at least for a neural network, is fairly small.
Yeah.
But so take the most important to you parameters for a given DSP model and run with it. And then my second question, which is a little bit orthogonal here, has anybody not tried the physical models directly, but can anybody, I'll aim it at you again, but anybody here, know of anybody doing, and this was a student of yours, just modeling of the audio, and I'll say resynthesizing the audio, but it doesn't have to be resynthesizing, but something like what Scott Levine would have done. Sines, transients, noise, that sort of thing, and then applying something to that, rather than saying, I'm going to take this physical or physics representation of what a string should do or what have you, and actually analyzing the audio itself and breaking that down. And that leads to, I'm looking at Pat here, that leads to the ability to really do all kinds of nutty things to the sound. But nonetheless, so that question, is anybody taking that tack that you know of?
Well, absolutely. Spectral modeling. So start with the same spectrogram, and instead of finding physical synthesis parameters, you find some other kind of like, let's say, spectral modeling component parameters, that kind of thing. So you can find groups of partials. You can find the envelopes. So it doesn't really matter what your target synthesizer is. In fact, have you heard of DDSP?
Yes, I was going to ask you about that, but you just did it for me.
That was based on spectral modeling. So they basically found the noise. They mapped an arbitrary timbre to the parameters of the spectral modeling, sines plus noise synthesizer. And so you get the, I think it's a 3 millisecond hop size, and you'd have some number of partials, and they were only interested in one voice at a time. And then there's this noise floor that gives you things like flute texture and violin and bow noise and stuff. And they also had a little reverberator that was pretty nice. And they would identify all of that in a big chain. And so that was very early. I mean, that was before the transformer. They were using the gated recurrent unit for that work, and some MLPs. So that was, so it's been happening since then at least. Yeah. Yeah, you see it come up, it's a recurring thing. We have some cases of that as well for some of the texture stuff.
No, I was going to pass it over.
I don't know if Jordan is still available, but it was sort of a question about how he decided to train this model on his MIDI fragments, because I would imagine that using a CNN for example on shorter fragments would work better because of that attention to local features. But if he was looking at larger sections of his plane, then maybe the multi-head attention would be more useful for this sort of RAG context. So I'm just kind of curious if anyone knows, like, is there a difference between sort of, the chunks of how you're chunking the MIDI there, and then also maybe in the latent representation if you're doing it just on MIDI, or if you're doing some kind of semantic label on top of MIDI chunks and getting that joint embedding space. It could be an interesting things to experiment with.
So that, do you know anything about that? That's a Lancelot question.
Yeah. Are they there?
No, they're not there anymore because it's late.
So Lancelot has a blog that you can find.
Yeah.
And he talks about it. So as I remember, might misremember something here, but I think it was like 8-bar chunks, and it was GPT-2, which you can download from Hugging Face. So that was the last open source transformer GPT model from OpenAI. And so he quantized it and mangled it to get onto his laptop. It runs all on his laptop. And so you train it on, he has a pre-trained model, which is, what is it? It's the one from the anticipatory transformer. So it's trained on the locked data set, and you can download it. So there's a pre-trained open weights model on Hugging Face for GPT-2. And so that's really nice, because then you don't have to train the foundation model. And then he just fine-tunes that on, I think he asked Jordan for on the order of half an hour of playing. So Jordan's an unbelievable improviser. It's the improvisation that you just record and want to study until you transcribe it and learn it, because he's just so gifted at that. It's the way he's approached music from childhood. And so he'll just do that. He'll like jam in the style of Johann Sebastian Bach for half an hour, and it's incredible. By the way, these make great prompts for Suno too. You take one of these Jordan passages, give it to Suno, and just tell it what style you want on top of that. It's just unbelievably good. So this is now just training data for GPT-2, and it's got a foundation model already, a music foundation model. We don't have any really good music foundation models. This is something that we really should pull together and make happen. And we need a really great, I'm sure Suno has one, right? But we don't. We don't have like the ultimate foundation model where a point on the hypersphere corresponds to every possible stylistic variation. So you train it for about half an hour of music until it converges, and then it's adapted to that style. And so then it's a conditioning variable whether he's in a jazz style or a Bach style or one of his other styles. So he chooses the mode, he plays half an hour of improvisation, he trains on that, conditions on that mode, and that's what he's dialoguing with on an 8-bar level. At least that was what he presented at the MIT presentation about a year ago. So I don't know what they're doing now. So I'm way behind. But that's what's also described in the blog. So that's how much I know.
Yeah, I think his blog is a really good resource to go to.
Yeah.
Thanks. I want to come back to your question for a second. I wanted to play this thing called Asia Dreaming. I set it up here. I don't know. There we go. So this is the guitar, but it doesn't sound like a guitar. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that was me stretching the harmonics so they're no longer 1/2, 1/3, 1/4. They're stretched all over the place.
Thank you so much. I did have one more question.
Sure.
Like at night, old Windows machines running some kind of synthesizer designer or like
that was Synth Builder, which was designed here.
Builder. Is that a lot? Is that
No, it's not alive. It probably only exists on 3 or 4 Next machines floating around. And I don't think we can get it off those Next machines anymore.
It's one prompt away. You just have to do it.
Yeah. Well, I have it on my list this year to try to get ChatGPT to set up a VMware emulator for Windows 98 with MIDI. So
you can't get source code for it?
No, we have the source code for it, but it uses the technology from Apple called Yellowbox, which is the next emulator layers running on top of Windows 98.
Oh, okay.
It's gold.
Yeah, it is. I mean, maybe I'll get it to run in an emulator. If I do, drop me a note, and we can turn you on to it. But
I'm a coder. I could take a crack at it.
Okay. It's not a coding problem though. It's a PC emulator problem. And I've hired 2 contractors to try to get it to work, and we haven't succeeded so far. So, okay. We have another question. We probably should be wrapping up pretty soon. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. I was wondering if you you brought up the example of creating like an imaginary instrument, maybe a cable 100 meters long or something.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you've ever done some sort of like prediction, like, oh, we're going to make we're going to push the boundaries of like making an imaginary instrument, but then actually making it after the fact. And wondering if you've ever found anything interesting, like
Actually making the physical instrument after the fact.
after like making a physical model of something that doesn't yet exist.
And then building the model. And then building
I have an obscure comment about this, and Julius and Nick, you probably don't even know about this, but Karplus-Strong, the way that it works is it's a delay line and it's recirculating, and there's these filters that are degrading. It's like a copy machine degrading it. I have a long-term project that I want to do that in tubes, real physical tubes, with a speaker and a microphone on each end, and a resistor to be the lead filter. And that would be a real instrument built around using the idea. And you could do crazy things with that, but I haven't done really doing that. I thought of that 30 years ago. Helium in the tubes. You can put helium. You can put helium in the tubes too. It would change the. Yeah.
Mark Rao was a PhD student here, and now he's on the faculty at MIT in their new music program, which everyone should apply to if you don't have a PhD yet, because that'd be a great place to get it. And he is really seriously interested in this problem, collaborating with luthiers, making real guitars. So they simulate the new guitar idea very carefully, and then listen to it, and then design it and move things around, change the bracing, and then do all these what ifs and decide on what would and all that, and then they build it. So it is influencing actual construction that way.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Somebody's doing that already. I just saw something about it the other day, and I was a little surprised by it. They're CNC machining out of a solid piece, the framing and bracing and making guitars thin. And it's very cool.
Yeah, I worked with a luthier who made violins about 30 years ago, and we used Chladni patterns on her reference top. And her goal was to, as she carved, to replicate the Chladni patterns from a reference top on the new violin that she was making. And it was a very interesting idea, but the idea that you could simulate that, and you could actually have a CNC machine manufacture it. You could manufacture something that...
Yeah, I need to go find that. It just popped up, and I didn't get a chance to see the whole thing, but I saw the guitar, and it was only about that thick, but it had full resonance and full capable with a sound hole in the center of it that was anti-feedback, so it could be used live. It was very interesting.
That's great. Okay. BZ, are you here somewhere?
I am.
What is our cutoff time?
I mean, that's kind of up to you. I mean, like, we need to have some time to just hang out and, together and just hang out and talk, I guess.
So maybe we'll do 3 more questions and then call it at that? Okay, who wants to do the last 3 questions?
Oh, I have one.
Okay.
AAX version that's going to be in the works. Pro Tools.
Is there a what?
An AAX
version of GeoShred.
Oh, that's an excellent question. I was having a long conversation about that today. So AAX for Pro Tools. All of this is based around MPE technology, and I've spent the last year and a half on and off helping Daniel Oppenheim learn about MPE. I'm the chairman of the MPE committee. They demonstrated MPE at NAMM, but I don't think they shipped it. But the AAX version is really dependent on MPE being available in Pro Tools. And I'll tell you, I have a relationship with Riverside City College, and their community college program is incredible. They train students, come out of community college, they're certified as Pro Tools engineers, and they can drop into any studio in Los Angeles and do a session. And every time I go down there, they're like, when are you going to have the AAX version? And it's like, well, Pro Tools needs to support MPE. And it's more than just, well, you need to have this funny MIDI thing. When you do these expressive things like legato on 2 different strings, different legatos, pitch bending in different directions, you need to have MPE to do that.
Actually, Pro Tools does support MPE, but it's very painful to set it up. It doesn't automatically do it, but you can...
Does it do it now? Because Daniel just told me the other day.
I think you're talking about David.
Yeah, excuse me, David.
And I used to work for Avid. I worked for them for 2 years.
Yeah.
So yes, you can do it. It's painful.
But what he's trying to do is
push a button and make it work.
What he's trying to do is make a single track which has all the MPE notes in it.
Oh, yeah, no, that doesn't work yet.
You have to be able to edit it.
You have to record across multiple channels.
Yeah, you can't edit it.
Yeah, the editing is painful. But honestly, editing MPE data is painful, period.
Actually, it isn't. In Logic, it's very straightforward. Yeah, in Cubase, it's very straightforward. In Bitwig, it's very straightforward.
Okay,
So
I'll have to go back and check those out.
Yeah, it works very well. The only caveat is that when you cut and paste, you have to do something special.
Yeah.
But that's what software's good
Because it's
for.
all intertwinkled.
Yeah. So, okay, we got 2 more questions. That was a good question, BZ.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, okay, well, we may be wrapping it up then. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. I want to do one thing. I want to get a photo of everybody. Oh, we'll do it one more time. Great, thank you. Okay, thanks, everybody. Thank you, Pat.
Hey,